Perfect. All right, guys.
Okay.
Welcome to tonight's presentation. This presentation is brought to you by Foothills Forage and Grazing Association. I'll be your host tonight. My name is Sonia Bloom, and I'm the Environmental and Communications Coordinator. For those of you who are not
I can
familiar
hear
with
it better. I
Foothills,
don't care if you need to see me.
sorry, just give me a second. I'm going to mute everybody here. Okay, perfect. For those of you who are not familiar with Foothills Forage and Grazing Association, we are a nonprofit producer-driven group. We address ideas, issues, and innovations centered around regenerative agriculture to forage and livestock producers in South Central Alberta. Our current board of directors is made up of 11 volunteer forage producers in around our area. And we strive to bring producers together by finding profitable and regenerative ways to produce forages and livestock. We do this through events, webinars, conferences, tours, our newsletter, and our social channels. Tonight's webinar is being sponsored by Foothills Forage and Grazing Association Gold sponsor Union Forage. Union Forage, we thank you for your support. If you guys need any forage help, make sure you talk with Grant and Graham later after tonight's presentation. They are also bringing tonight's expertise. So a little bit of housekeeping. We will have a question and answer period at the end of tonight's webinar. How you can ask a question is this little chat box at the very top. Just type it in and we will get to your question at the end. I am going to mute everybody. Please do leave your microphone on mute, and I'm also going to disable the webcam sharing just so that we don't have any technical glitches. And it will be recorded as well. So if you guys want or missed anything or want to rewatch it, then you will be able to find it on Foothills' website probably by end of the day tomorrow. So real quick, our presentation is being brought to you by Grant Lestuca. Grant farms with his two daughters in, I believe you're kind of central Alberta. They have a cow-calf operation. He worked with Alberta Agriculture in various roles over 30 years. He said those efforts always related to trying to realize the value from seizing opportunity of managing forages and grasslands. It's going to be perfect for tonight's presentation. Grant believes in holistic management, decision-making, and it can be done simultaneously and strives to be regenerative. He is now working part-time with Union Forage and also freelances doing various forage projects. So without further ado, I will turn everything over to Grant. All right, Grant, we should be able to hear you.
All right, I hope so. And if luck has it, we'll get going. All right, can everybody see me okay as it is here?
Yep, we can see you perfectly, Grant.
And Sonia, can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
All right, what I'm going to do as I'm doing this is if I'm going to mess up anything, I'm going to quickly trust Sonia to hop in and she'll interrupt so that you don't feel interrupted as we do this. This presentation certainly is brought to you by the Union Forage team, and I was lucky enough to join it as a young forage specialist and looking forward to learning from the senior forage specialist, Graham Finn, and the team that's here. So I'll share a little bit about, as we're looking at planning your forage year using a systems approach, and some of the ideas that you brought forward, I'm sure, along the way to some of the ideas that some of our people are working on with Union Forage, and kind of as, I guess, with our learnings, our knowledge, how are we putting this year together, and what does the future look like with that? The importance, I think, in any of these is the fact that people have got their own situation, nobody else's but their own. And with that in mind, you have to look at your own factor. I know in mind you have your own factors. That at times advice is important, but it really is information to make your own advice. And that is your family and your team. And I think that's something that majority of us with the Foothills Forage and Grazing Association, who I'm a member with, and others, view highly.
Okay, when we're looking at drawing in sunlight energy, so much of that goes into feeding the soil. And so as we talked about your system, your economies and everything, one of the things I know that's important to us at Union Forage is feeding you and your soil. And the economics have to be in balance with, we know what the plants are doing, let's understand those plants better. So we can work with them, working with nature for the success they can bring. And we know when we work with those plants, there's lots of opportunities. And the opportunities that come are from the organisms that say, thank you kindly. And Graham sent me this picture just the other day. And if you can see that little pink line, it's an earthworm. And Sonia, am I still coming through okay?
Yeah, you're good.
I'm just checking. Okay. The fact is that earthworm is still moving on November 16th. Why? One of the things I find interesting is when I talked to the Nora Polovich, the manager of North Peace, and Tom Fron, again with the North Peace at the time, they said that some of their soils, in fact, that had cover crops on it were soils that warmed up earliest in the spring and cooled down latest in the fall. So we're looking at situations where I think it's like a little beehive. How bees, in fact, keep the queen going is they provide a lot of energetics into the system. And with the organism energetics that occur in the systems when we feed them, it's an opportunity to deal with that that forage year, a little more green, hopefully, in terms of that organism, that earthworm working longer. But in my way of thinking, the reason it was working was it said, thank you kindly, because it also had a system that was working with it. And in that case, the person was using a swath grazing blend with brassicas and such, also with oats and triticale and so forth. One thing we know is that we know green leaves are important, but we also know that the majority now of what goes into soil health largely is roots and root exudates. It's more than the litter on the surface that we thought was that slow breakdown material that contributed to the soil and building soil. Well, the reality is it's roots and root exudates that do more of that. And that's the point that Christine Jones was making in this workshop, in this webinar, is the fact that the keeping those roots and leaves working for us is really an important thing. The organic matter increase is crucial because that 1% organic matter work out in Michigan showed a 12% greater yield. So if somebody has a 3% organic matter increase, like I believe one of the swath grazing ray families has at Arikana, that has potential for a 36% increase in yield. And I know on Graham's swath grazing, he'd done even more than that, fortunately. And so you're looking at potential for yield increases. You're also looking at potential for water holding capacities, which is crucial. And that is a point that we keep forgetting. And all my searching, I realize that we evaporate a lot of water more than we think. And a lot of it is because our receptor, the soil, is not set to accept it. And even in dry conditions out at Oyen, we saw that a real biodiverse cover crop was green, where monoculture crops side by side of it were in fact yellow. So what does that tell us? It tells us that it's plants working with plants, the soil organism activities. There's more going on than we think. And the beauty of some of that, as we look at some of it, vascular, arbuscular, mycorrhizal fungi, or just simply arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, those are organisms that attach onto the plant, form arbusculars, and then turn around and barter with the plant for the root exudates. And they have not as high a speed internet as I wish I had here, but they may be a higher one, and they go below the roots And that's why we'll find often that we'll think, oh, roots are only so deep, but that's the point we're finding now, that the 0 to 6 inch, 6 to 12 inch, 12 to 18, 18 to 24, and Kimberly Cornish's work she's doing now looking at soil carbon is going to 40 inches, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, or greater. And the idea behind it is, depending on the soil, depending on the roots, we can go deeper into the soil to draw on nutrients, to take nutrients, to bring nutrients, and to create a deeper, and that is one of the things that was found under the mob grazing at Neil Dennis, as we shared in an earlier webinar, was the fact that his carbon capture to depth was deeper and higher amounts. How so? Well, it's because our high-speed internet, the VAM, does a lot of work for us. So, and again, I can't say enough about when we talk fertility, remember, if the land has been depleted for significant periods of time, the reality is that I don't know if we can afford to wait at times. And a year like this with nitrogen prices being lower, it doesn't hurt in my mind at all to be judicious and look at the system and say, okay, I'm going to invest in fertility in the soil, then let the plants and my management work together to draw that fertility and optimize its use. This was an example of it, I think, on a trip around that a few of the Union Forage reps had. And when we looked at the relay blend, and this was a stand, the person zero till, removal of the existing hay stand, dairy operation, they'd been manuring it and everything. So they silaged the first crop and they had the relay blend planted, and I gave you what it is with some cereal, and I think it was triticale. And so they silaged it, and this is the regrowth on October 6th in that stand. And yes, it was a wet year, and it was up by Lacombe. But the beauty of it, to me, I think, from what we can see with the robust nature of some of these plants, is we're looking at a fertility area here, which was even greater than some in between maybe. So again, fertility is important no matter what you plant, whatever you're working with. Excitement I think we had was when we noticed this, and if you notice this white, it is a fungi. And at first I thought it was arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, but Graham told me that Nicole Masters had said to him, it's not visible if it's arbuscular. So it's another type of fungi, but it's just showing you soil activity. And it's, again, one of those opportunities to learn from people who are learning from others. And that's something that I'm very fortunate with Union to do with Graham. The thing I wanted to bring forward here is that, again, we're back to microbes, soil organic matter, decomposition, and the carbon pathway that is root exudates. And if we put that together, we're looking at how best to put it together. Well, kind of going back to Christine Jones' comments, biodiversity, and I'm involved in some work with that, and hopefully we get some funding for it. Green active growth, we have to have that solar panel working. The long season of growing. Remember, those plants don't want to be just, soil organisms, my apologies, don't want to be fed just for a short period of time. They'd really like a long season. And we know with yield, leaf area index, a great solar panel. So the living root masses to depth very simply means that as they turn over, as they die, we've got an opportunity to build organic matter, carbon, and carbon is, in fact, 57% of soil organic matter. And so that's why we kind of talk about both of them with the same terms. But no, carbon is 57% of soil organic matter. But anytime we're putting carbon in the soil, it's soil organic matter improving to depth. This stream of green, and that's something Graham and I were talking before this presentation, as we look at putting that forage year together, how can we keep the stream of green going? And it really starts with that green plant tissue being maintained at a very high state of health, so it can be a receptor to sunlight energy. So it can be that green stream into the plant, into the soil. And with that comes the most opportunity to build soils for better crops. And if you've not gone to the SARE site, Sustainable Agriculture Research and Extension, my apologies, out of the US. It's a wonderful site to go to. Go to it and have a look through a bunch of their materials, like this whole handbook on there. They're free to download. Again, excellent materials. And as Sonia and Graham and I were talking about putting this presentation together, I thought of what Chris Nickel and Kimberly Cornish challenged us to. If you've been to their workshops, they'll say, how can you grow green for 300 days or more? And I thought that's pretty optimistic, but 250, is that optimistic? Maybe it should be, in fact, as the late Jerry Tellew would say, a mentality. Doesn't mean we succeed, but how can we take that mentality into the picture? How can we look at early spring green? And somebody says, well, it doesn't green up too early here. Well, some plants do green up earlier than others, right? And in fall, what plants green up later, stay green later? How can we build a green system throughout that year? What are our present alternatives? What are the options we have? And with that in mind, we're going to try to build some of that with you here tonight as we walk through that year. The principles in so many of these things are still same. And I know that many of you in the soil health world have seen this again and again. And it is because they are holistic. They are simply receptors of rain, preventing soil from evaporating moisture, making sure that that soil aggregate structure, that house framework is maintained. The plant diversity, the rotation simply means feeding a whole array of soil organisms in the system and trying to get some synergizing going there. The living roots in the soil, remember, roots and root exudates are the largest contributor to soil carbon, soil organic matter, and the flow. The integrating livestock. Some of you on this presentation may be crop farmers and not have livestock, so we'll look at a little bit at both. But the integrating livestock is a great opportunity in many ways to put some pieces back together that are kind of exciting. I know that a short season crop that some grain farmers find useful if they pull off an early pea harvest, depending on the circumstances, hailed out, or even as many had this year, flooded out. Then when it got drier, opportunities to use a product like Rootmaster Union Forage sells that is really looking at causing water infiltration, building paved highways into the soil so that we don't evaporate water, we don't have water ponding, we in fact have water infiltrating, water capturing to depth and for release later, soil integrity being maintained, and soil structure being maintained as the pores fill with water, the many pores that are created through the tap roots of some of these plants. And the radish is known for its ability to go there and pound its way down into the soil to depth. And this one was planted in July, and I think when we were out there it was October, but when we looked at it middle of July to now, it was about, I think, 16 inches in length going into the soil in that situation. And it was a site where they wanted to address water because they had too much ponding in spots. The key thing to integrating livestock, I selfishly say, is we have to take care of today. Cash flow. The cost of forage, the cost of living, the cost of everything has to be met at the same time as we build wealth below the ground. We don't want to be giving up because after I took the holistic management course, when I judiciously did cash flows, I found it a real challenge if you're investing in tomorrow and not getting anything back today to make it work. So we're trying to complete that circuit, getting the cash flow going into the system to cover the seed costs. And another thing that's really neat is because so much of what goes in one end of the cattle comes out the other. And it completes a nutrient life cycle circle a lot better. And intriguing enough, work that is being done, and as I understand, Tim McAllister Lethbridge is working on some of that. Are we really more similar in a rumen with protozoa, with nematodes, with fungi, bacteria, in a plant, in a soil? Are they more similar? Are we, in fact, when we bring animals to the landscape, really bringing a mobile inoculation service of the soil? As the urine and feces fall to the soil surface, so much of that material is, in fact, soil microbes, potentially fed by rumen microbes that are coming. So again, that joke, remember you are what you eat. I kind of wonder if there isn't a lot more to that. Looking at the year in green, and this is from the grazing side, putting the pieces together, building them. And as we look at the options, the choices we've got in front of us, we'll walk through these tonight a bit. And the key thing I find here is that if we integrate the livestock, we also integrate a calving cycle, a weaning time, and as some of the conversations go, when are you weaning? Normally, you'll hear Graham comment that he weans when his forage quality, his forage quantity is diminishing. And that is the point. I weaned already. And me weaning already is because I didn't have the forage quality to maintain the system. And I'll share with you a little bit of comments on how a setup that we can work with in growing green that probably can do that for us. And it's another alternative, and I think it's quite a cost-effective alternative. One thing I don't want to pass over is that when we did the year-round grazing, 300 plus days, 365, and now we're looking at growing green 300, 250, the fact is the base of those systems is perennial pastures. And a well-managed perennial pasture that's biodiverse. And that's why you'll see us promoting legumes as much as we do, because we're looking at a system of feeding the 78% nitrogen in the air, converting it into a plant usable form for the legumes to grow and thrive, and thereafter, be it arbomuscular mycorrhizal fungi to bring nitrogen back to the plant from some of those resources, or urinary or fecal nitrogen being available in an organic form, a very friendly form for the plants to take advantage of. So looking at perennial pastures as your key profit center base, and with that in mind, build it well, manage it well, and that should be the base that a person goes from. Whoops, going the wrong way here. One of our other producers that we've followed over years, it's a real ecologist himself, Murray Abel. We were out in one of his places in October, and when we look at this stand, we'll see the green of the Sicer milk fetch, and that's what it's known for. It's a little later starting in spring, but holding its leaves, holding its green color, even under the snow into January is what we found it did at Lacombe when the Western Forage Beef Group, Dr. Vern Barron, was looking at it in terms of how well it did. It held its leaves and it held its color under the snow and this green photosynthetic capacity. How much does it photosynthesize under the snow? People would say, no, nothing does. Well, I know it does, and I've seen it in our clippings we've done. And then we come later as the cows are grazing those plots, and we'll find that the extensions of 2 inches on the plants have occurred since we clipped under the snow. Reed canary grass in this picture, as you can see, it didn't do so well in the fall. The early frosts So we got to pick plants that can keep leaves on themselves, that can be, in fact, robust in the fall, strong enough with growth, strong enough with fertility to stay green, and also a cultivar, a structure, something that can keep those green leaves attached. And Elgar, who's on our call today, Elgar Grindy, Elgar and Annie were part of the Sandfoin project. And as you can see this, that's some pretty nice pasture to have when the leaves are turning yellow and ready to fall off. And it snowed the next day and winter came, but that was under the snow the following day for those animals to consume. And you can see the high quality forage in front of these cows. And of course, being the nice guy I am, I picked Elgar's cows that were his culls. So I apologize for doing that, Elgar. Pasture was wonderful and the cows were doing very well. You can see that girl, she put a lot into that calf, and they milk better when they've got good forage. There's no doubt about that. Very true. And that's one of the reasons, one of the perennial forage blends, Graze Master. And then in this picture, Graham has he combined it with Nitro Master V. And you can see the mixture you've got there. You've got the sicers and the Sandfoin that hold their leaves as they get in the frost. The alfalfa that's known to do well, but doesn't hold its leaves so well in the fall. The hollow stems of Sicer milk vetch, of Sandfoin, often mean they'll fall down in frost to be under the snow, where alfalfa stands up and takes it on the nose and doesn't do as well. But we're looking at feeding a system for 250 days. And that's where I think it's really important to look at what you've got and manage it and build it so that it is going to be a longer period of green, because you can pick and choose wisely to help yourself, but management is still a key to all of this. Now looking a little more at the annuals and realizing that they can be put together in ways that when we make mistakes, and I freely admit, my wife will tell you, I make more mistakes than anybody, because I blame people like Elgar Grindy, who's on the call, because he comes up with great ideas and then I try to copy it, and it just takes a while for me to learn fast enough how to do it, where he's got that experience to put it together. And we do that, and that's one thing at Union Forage we're glad to share. If we make a mistake, we're going to tell you about it. And we go back to clients, as I was just out to one the other day, trying to put together how we can do it better next year, and how we can do it better, how he can do it better, or she for that matter, because we're all in this together. And how can these plants work better from all of those components that we've got in this pocket knife? We know that it covers all bases. One of the beauties of these cocktail covers, and people call them cover crops, people call them cocktail covers. Dr. Mike Schallenberg at Swift Current said they should be called cocktails. And his reasoning for that was the different components going together to him was important to note. And I can see why. Because they function. They got different functions to them. And as they have those different functions, we find that an opportunity, and I'll share with you later, of jump-starting a system by putting in some different components. We know in the US, you tell somebody, I added a warm season grass, and that's a great opportunity to bring in something that is really different. C4s are not, they're warm seasons. C3s are cool seasons. So an extra carbon there, there's an opportunity for warm seasons to truly be efficient carbon capturers, more so than cool season, if you can grow them. And that's why you'll see situations where corn does so well in building soil health, because of that C4 nature. But remember, we have to have green. We have to have yield. All those things have to go together, and over a long season. So we look at the root crops typically here, brassicas and certainly legumes in many cases, abilities to stand up when the going gets tough, when the ground is cold. And we look at our cool season grasses. Some are annuals, some are cool as perennials, but our Italian ryegrass doesn't overwinter except at Andy Hart's place and maybe a few others. But the fact is that they generally will say, leave their quality there till the late part of the fall, and you can get tremendous quality green forage, as Chris Nichols would like to see, pushing that November timeline into even December under snow at times. So yeah, we're getting closer there. And a kiss. The nitrogen fixtures, yes, there are arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi or vesicular arbomuscular mycorrhizal fungi components as well. So we're looking at them. Whoops, I'm flying the wrong way now. One of our Union Forage people, Ben Stewart, thought it's very important we look at more than 1 year. And that's where Double Down came about. It was a Union Forage product that he put together, and it's got the sweet clover advantage. And with sweet clover, of course, we know it's very tough out in the country. And we were out at with some clients out at Oyen into late September, and they were still putting in sweet clover. And the ability for it to go in late, but to be as robust as it is to try to grow the following year in tough conditions, and to be a 2-year crop, a biennial, and grow in the shoulders of the year. So we're going to have an early silage crop maybe next year, or we're going to have a grazing crop this year, depending on when we plant it. And depending on what we've got in that mix, we start doing double duty and using it for more than one purpose and in different ways. And again, always looking at including some of the winter cereals, then we know that they are really friendly with arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi and everything. And we've seen a little bit of chicory that overwinters. So yes, we're looking at how we go into the next year. And I put this up. This is one of Graham's failures. And when I saw it, I just thought to myself, wow, because what I saw was it in August, a month after that hail damage. And in my mind of 30 some years in forages, you know when something's going on that doesn't add up. And that stand was well up to Graham's thigh on August 25th, a month after getting pelted to the ground with a hailstorm. How can you get that robust regrowth? And that is something that I've found over time, that when the stars align, if you want to say, when you've got synergy, and this was a system where Graham had swath grazed on it for a number of years. So remember, he's feeding soil organisms, giving them lots to take in. And when they lost their host plant, they quickly went to bat, and they will go and bring nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur. I don't know potassium, I shouldn't say that so quick. Sulfur products and micronutrients to the plant, bring water to the plant. They're doing everything they can to get their host back up and going, so they're going to be fed. And this, when Graham was swathing it later in September, you can see it's up to the height of the swather. And the beauty of that and the yield that he got back so quickly was again part of working with nature, working with the soil, and completing that circle of nutrient cycling with the animal. And so that whole soil food web being considered as part of it. We don't have to understand it, but the more we are understanding, the more better decisions we can make at times. And so Graham going out there saying, okay, you guys, nitrogen's cheap. This is my winter feed source. It's going to fit a lot of cost-saving bills. I better do something about it. And so he gave it a jump start. And if you're looking between the rows, you're seeing that the swath is down of the oats, but the growth of the brassicas, the hairy vetch, and others continue because they are below the cutting height. And you got to cut it low enough so that you're getting a good swath yield. 8 inches, 6 inches, maybe 8 inches, but don't cut it as high. Potentially, we don't want you to give up your own cash flow, give up your own profit, but keep that option going. And in this situation, if we'd have got another inch of rain, it would have been beautiful, but it was dry And so we didn't get the yield between the rows we wanted. But what we did get, as you can see with these cows making this choice, what are they doing that's funny? Animal behavior. They're not going on the swaths. They're going in between the swaths. They know that the highest quality forage is the brassicas and others that are in between the rows. The high calcium they're going to get from there allows you to have calves on cows that are lactating. The quality potentially, you've got a feed test to know this, and we'll share that in a second. Can this forage sustain a cow-calf pair? And the beauty of sustaining a cow-calf pair is having enough quality. And this is Graham's forage quality. And with that in mind, you're looking at adequate quality for a cow that's lactating, just shortly low on energy, just not much, crude protein above and beyond. Calves that on paper 1.8 gain, no, Graham and I both felt, let's be conservative, 1.4. The beauty of that, though, is cost. Anytime I'm combining yardage, I'm combining animal units and putting it together cost-wise, what I'm doing is I'm making one unit out of two. My calves are weaned already. My calves probably have a yardage cost of 50 cents per calf per day or more. This system has got some yardage already built in. And when you look at that, you realize the cost savings advantage of quality forage, but it's quality and quantity. How do we manage both? With 212 cow days of grazing per acre, that's what Graham got last year. That was his cost of $1.25. And like any good union forage rep, Mark McNish also kept track of his in Saskatchewan, and he came up with $1.35, and that was per cow day. He had calves on side for 60 days. So it isn't a perfect calculation, but the point is, I know it is a lot cheaper than me separating a set of cows and having a separate set of calves, because I'm managing two units, and the beauty of keeping units together more and cost savings from having a low-cost feeding system versus a higher cost one where we haul feed out to animals. So again, you're looking at the union forage reps trying out and comparing to each other and learning from each other. A part that I really liked about this, that we're looking at winter coming, and look at that green. I see still cell integrity. I still see a solar panel intact that is feeding organisms in the soil. And that's what Graham found with his earthworm. And I guess I should have had it here. But the fact is that that forage quality under the snow, the photo panel, the longer season green, the keeping the soil warmer, certainly because of insulation, but also feeding activities. One of the other forage blends, Ultimate Annual Blend, that's known from Union Forage for multiple grazings, and again, a real jump starter, because there is combining some things, trying to get a grazing system to put together that can be grazed multiple times throughout the summer, or as the crew at Stettler decided here in their situation, maybe it was going to be silage. Maybe it was going to be swath grazed instead. It depended what they wanted to do with it, but it gave them some different forages in their blend. And that's the kind of quality they brought forward, or could be brought forward on this. And this, as you can see, is even better in energy. So tremendous quality to keep a calf on a cow. And remember, that's a snapshot in time. So it's a proper collection of the forage at the time of swathing. Then ask yourself, how much does it deteriorate slowly over time? There's science, there's research on that. And I'll tell you, it goes down some. And depending on situations, we still know that you can't make a silk purse of a sow's ears. Maybe it's a Ukrainian saying, I don't know, but this is definitely a silk purse here. And the dryland blend. It's important because I know that a lot of Foothills Forage and Grazing Association members come from drier areas, or if we're viewing this next year, as one of my friends sent me something saying, hey, it's going to be a drier year. Maybe it's where we start hedging our bets. we start saying, okay, let's put some C4s in there, like Proso millet, like sorghum Sudan, or sunflowers, and knowing the differences they can bring to a picture to jumpstart, because there you've got warm seasons, cool seasons, brassicas, root crops, and with this one, of course, you can see the cool season of the fall rye or the trip that's in there contributing to it. So I forgot to include it. But again, looking at some of those advantages, maybe work for the drier areas better, or in a year where you're looking at dry, you switch out what you're doing, say, no, I don't think I'll go with the ultimate blend. Maybe that sandier land, let's put the dry land blend on it and go with it. Roger Myers, one of the Union Forage specialists in Saskatchewan, is trying out some of the things we know Gabe Brown talked about, seeding annuals into an old hay stand, and how do you go about doing that? And in his situation, and I don't know how it's going to work next year because that was this year, but all said and done, you can see he still has a crop aftermath to harvest. He has provided a whole array of literally antennas to talk to the soil organisms attached there. What can we do for you? What can we provide for you? What do we have? He's got some warm seasons. He's got some cool seasons. He's got some brassicas. And I don't mind having lamb's quarters, can be excellent quality forage as well when cut right. So again, we're looking at a system of combining. The important thing for legumes, inoculant. Important thing about inoculant for legumes is make sure that it's up to snuff. And that's something I know that we at Union Forage and others are very proud of. Maintain the product's quality so that you're going to get the result. And here Graham's got a picture. You can see the seed color. I'll share a little more about that in a minute. Very important. That was the seed cover that went into this plant. And as it sits there, visible, it shows you information to make advice. The other thing I was kind of shocked about, was I never realized that, you know, Union Forage is one company that puts on the bag, depth to seed by inches, seeding rate, purpose, additional comments, establishments, and the different products. So as you're looking at the bag, you've got all of this, perennials and annuals, all down there for a cheat sheet. So keep the bag afterwards, and you've got some good information. Seeding rates increase, you know, all that is, in my mind, important when you're doing things and you want to do things right. The seed coatings, one of the things you're looking for is what's in there. And as we know, just like the rhizobia bacteria in legumes, the mycorrhizal fungi relationship in the soil. Let's get it a jump start. Union Forage is the first to do this, to put it in the mix. I don't, field of dreams, build it and they will come. Our hope with some of this is to put some common sense in the seed coatings. The color, so that we can find it to determine depth, because if you seed it too deep, it'll look beautiful being the same color at 1.5 inches deep, but never grow up to the soil surface and survive. Very important to know the depth you're seeding at, not just on the headlands, but across the field. And that's something again and again and again and again and again and again we find in the forage world, that we've got the depth too deep. If you do not have a firm seed bed before you start, the seed coating will tell you how deep the seed is, but you want it to be seeded at a depth where it's going to germinate and come through the soil surface. Feed it. I know Agritrend, my friend Therese Tompkins, really likes the zinc micronutrients in the products. That really does help the germination a little bit, the absorbent up to many times the seed, so that we're going to draw moisture to the seed, so what happens goes. Some of the other products that we're excited about and trying and play with, the self-seeder, and this is actually on our place, and you can see as the manure starts to break down And Graham and I argue over this. I say feed it anytime, because when the manure starts to break down, then the seeds start to germinate. Very high quality forage on this land. It was bale grazed, and you can see the sandfoin coming. And I guess I missed that one up there, but that was in July, June, and this was in October. So little sandfoin plants coming. The product rocket fuel, another thing we're playing with plantain and chicory. Very high quality forage products growing in New Zealand. They fatten a lot of lambs on and such. Look at that, 2.8 average daily gain on these animals. Wow. So that tells you something. Ken Van Dristen, our Union Forage specialist, one of his pet projects is hybrid fall rye. 3 crops in 2 years. And that's something I missed when I was looking at it. It grows earlier in the spring, like a fall rye almost, so early that it can be silaged on the 1st of July, part of 1st of July. And the quality Ken has, I don't have his. The quality Ken had in this was very respectable on July 1st, of something in the range of, I think, a little over 10% crude protein and over 60 TDN. But the idea there is taking it off July gives us all of July, August into September of growth. What are we going to do with it? Seeding another crop, and be it a green feed crop, be it a double down, be it in fact another crop that has potential to be harvested. And it was seeded in the fall. It's recommended it be seeded into September, August, September. So Ken's comment on it, the seed costs quite a bit. And that's why Graham and I have been a little slow promoting it. But the reality is, if you can get 3 crops off the land in 2 years, that's what the thing Ken is trying to look through and see. Rocket fuel, you can see why you're getting the performance of those animals. The Italian ryegrass, I forgot to mention it, was with the chicory and plantain. Tremendous quality feed. Oats has a TDN of 74. Mike Witt, our Union Forage specialist in BC, is working on corn and interseeding between rows. And I know that Roger Hovde also with corn ranches did some of this summer. And you can see, Mike was telling us he's getting about half a ton an acre. So it's not a high yield, but if the corn, without compromising corn yield, and seeded at the 3rd to 5th leaf stage on corn. So I better get through this. I don't want to keep you guys too long, but the idea behind it is have your cake and eat it too. Pick your timing. This was with irrigation. If you're going to damage the corn, I wouldn't recommend it, because corn is like your swath grazing or your swath material. It's your biggie. It's got to yield well. It costs a lot, so it has to yield well. It's got to get over 220, 240 grazing days because of its cost to put in the ground, the terms of use agreement, all those things. So if we can take advantage of green later in the season, or if it's a year where we're getting a lot of smoke in the air, then these will be more robust and produce more. Mike's also doing some work on 60-inch rows, but I don't have it in here. Some of our perennial blends that you'll see with us, they're on our website. I just grabbed them from there. And the wonders of the internet nowadays, you just punch in Union Forage and up comes the website. And you can see we've also got some of the different alfalfas. Yellowhead is one I'm excited that I want us to be carrying because of its longevity. We've got Sandfoin, we've got the Sicer milk vetches. I see Sicer's missing in this one. But anyway, yes, we've got, and the blending, we can blend what you wish, but just give us lead time, because the blending, small or large, that's available at Union Forage to make that long season green, to pull it together, to strategize, to put it together for your needs, and other products that are available that aren't even included in some of this list. And I know I'm missing some, but delivered in totes, delivered by bags. Again, what works for you? What can we do for you? and in trying to make that 250 days possible of green as we build that year. It's a juggling match, guessing the weather, but remember, the more we build soil, the more the soil and Mother Nature's on our side. The more that earthworm was willing to work into November for that situation there with organic matter, with litter, armor on the soil, possibilities, building it. And that's one of the exciting things that Foothills, as they're planning their next Western Canadian Conference on Soil Health and Grazing, juggling hats, putting them together, getting the science behind those hats, understanding it. You don't have to be on your own. Whether you choose to use a union forage person to do so, we'll share our mistakes. We'll want to know how you make out. We learn from you and share with others if you don't mind. And at the same time, we'll turn around and carry out our own experiments to find out. The wonders of bale grazing is something that I got involved with in 1995. If you're 2.5 feet to a sandstone layer, 2 feet, you might want soil. And that's why I got involved in that then. And again, lots of people to draw on. That's my final slide, Sonia. So I thank you all for listening to me, and the questions that you have, I'm going to pass it over to Graham to be able to answer those. So I'm going to turn it back over to Sonia and the opportunity for you to get in any questions you've got now, or you've got us at any time to draw on. Thank you so much to Sonia for letting Union Forage be part of today. And again, take advantage, any of you that are chiming in from different places, you've got your research association close to you, hopefully doing neat things. I follow what they're doing also, and we're learning together here. And hopefully, as Dwayne McCartney would say, learning and learnings make knowledge. And knowledge hopefully is yours in terms of your own advice being put to use. I'll leave it with you. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you, Grant. That was a great presentation. Lots of knowledge as usual and tons of experience. So thank you for sharing with us. We have a few minutes, guys, for question and answer periods. So if you have any questions, again, you just kind of type it in that little chat box, which looks like the little speech bubble.
Okay, I passed it back to you, Sonia.
Okay, thank you. Let's just... Okay, I haven't had any questions come through yet, Grant. So I'll give it a couple more minutes. If you guys don't have any questions and you want to leave, I'd want to say thank you for joining us tonight. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to be with us. We will, like I said earlier, we will be sharing the recording on our website, and I will share it on Twitter and Facebook when it's ready. Oh, we have a question. With the rise in clubroot positives in Alberta, what is your feeling about having brassica species in those blends? Great question.
I'm leaving it for Graham.
Just trying to see if there's...
Okay, you there?
Yeah, we got you, Graham.
Got me? Yep. Yeah, so that's one of the things that we've really found out by working up around Camaros. And so we developed a blend with the help of colony up that way. So we call it the break crop blend, and it doesn't have any brassicas. It's got Italian ryegrass, clovers, what else has it got in there? Clovers, Italian ryegrass, some shoot, I have to look it up here.
Hairy vetch.
Hairy vetch, there you go. Yep, break crop blend. So hairy vetch, Italian ryegrass, and crimson clover. So that can be either mulched back in or grazed. But that they say that grazer forage radish does not harbour club root, and that's the Kiwi's version of kind of a tillage radish, but we just don't take the risk with it, and we just keep it to grasses and legumes in the in that blend.
Thanks, Graham. Great answer. Our next question is, what's the possibilities of seeding sainfoin into an existing alfalfa crop?
Haven't done it, but we do. Like, I've done it in alfalfa and sainfoin together at the beginning. Have done that lots. I have seeded lots of sainfoin and sizer into my pastures, and have had pretty good results actually. It gets that way where in those areas where I've seeded, the cattle hang out there the most and chew the grass and the sainfoin alfalfa down together, and it can be overgrazed. They keep going back to it. But I haven't done alfalfa into an existing, sainfoin into an existing alfalfa stand that I know of from the guys I deal with. But in a case like that, just say in 2021, you get one bag and do 5 acres or something like that. Don't go and bank the farm on it. Just try it and then keep us in the loop.
Excellent. Thanks, Graham. Another question, this one, I'm trying to move away from heavy fertilizer inputs, money gambles. Do you suggest or recommend fertilizer applications with swath grazing blends?
Yep. Yeah. The one piece that we have at Airdrie, we've been grazing that for 15 years and continuously controlled grazing every winter in swath grazing. And in 2015, I started using no fertilizers, and then had great crops for 15, 16, 17. And then in 19, in 18, we had a drought and we had a not bad crop. And then in 19, I had a implosion. It was almost a total wreck. The plants weren't responding like they normally do. We had good rain. Now, did I mine the fertility out there in the last 3 to 4 years, and especially in 18 when we had the drought? Those plants did really good. We had one of the best crops in the area for swath grazing, and so I have gone back to doing fertility. I know we've cut down our use of fertilizers by having livestock and different forages growing and the root systems rotting, but I'm not going to take that gamble because I don't have a plan B for winter feeding, so I have to do the most. But I do soil tests every summer to see what I'm going to do. I've already bought my fertilizer already for 2021, and because I bought it in August, September, it was half the price of what April, May costs were. So it's already bought, it's already put away. So yeah, I'm not going to risk it anymore. And none of the professionals has given me a great answer of why it did that. I had the plants just struggling to grow, except where the cattle urinated that winter. It was 45 days worth of growth, looked phenomenal and on track, and just within a foot out of the urine was hardly any growth. It was only about 6 inches tall and really left behind. So I went and put, I think it was about 80 pounds of N, or something like 70 or 80 pounds of N onto that paddock and recovered it. And within 12 days, you could see the difference. I didn't go back to look at it from when the fertilizer was put on until a couple of weeks later, and it was like day and night. So yes, I will be using fertilizer, even though we've got livestock. There's not enough science behind it yet for me to say, yeah, well, it could be a problem or it might not be a problem. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Graham. I haven't seen any more questions come through, so let's just give it one more minute.
But I definitely believe that we have to have livestock back on our soil. You look at the thousands of years that livestock was on the soil, and then we went and shot them all out. Not we, the ancestors went and shot them all out. And that's how this country was developed, these Great Plains, is with the bison antelope and deer and elk and yada, yada, yada. And we've taken all that system out. So we really need to get some sort of livestock impact back on the soil, but we still need some modern technologies too.
Hi, Graham. I unmuted myself, so I don't know if you can hear me or not. This is Elgar here.
Yes, we can hear you, Elgar.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, it's one thing, everyone learns by somebody else's mistakes. So I'll tell you some of one of the mistakes I made this year is when I seeded my, that's actually a pasture I was putting down. I just kind of did the calculations. Okay, so many sacks of alfalfa, take them through in a sack of sandfoin, I'll be in fine shape. But I didn't realize that sandfoin has a fairly large seed. And as such, you don't get as many plants out of a sack of seeds of sandfoin as you do out of alfalfa. What's the seed count on, say, a pound of sandfoin compared to a pound of alfalfa?
Yeah, Grant's got that number. He did all that this year. So the seed of sandfoin is very small, but it's the coat that's around it, the shell, that's rather large. Exactly. Yeah. So Grant did those numbers this year, actually. So I'll pass that one off to him. I bet he's going through all his paperwork trying to find that now, Elgar.
Okay, if you can hear me, that's something that is very important. Every company puts percent on a bag or things like that, but the seed size difference. Sandfoin is one because of the pod being on it, as Graham brought forward, is huge difference. And 30,000 seeds per pound to sandfoin and 200 seeds per pound to alfalfa. 200,000. Sorry, my apologies.
1,000. Yeah, 1,000.
Yeah, so you're looking at so many times difference in size. So yes, the fact is that you, if you look at plant count, you have to put a lot more on because of that just simple biological difference. And it is true with any of the seeds that you're buying is look at the seed sizes and realize the opportunities. The one thing about the legumes, the seed coating that's on the legumes makes up about 34% of it. But work done by Jimmy Henning and Joe Burns showed that with the legumes, they will still be the same. So if you've got 34% coating, you end up having 34% more seeds germinating and coming to be plants. So with the work done on the legumes, I'd say that that's another thing is seed coating, Elgar. And yeah, once they get coated with seed, they're down to about 18,000 and some sandfoin. I love sandfoin because it reseeds itself so well. And the opportunities of these legumes that we've got, I want to support the plant breeders because we've had some amazing Canadian and Alberta work from Dr. Cheria as he used his Sicer and his sandfoin blends. But at the same time, I know that those plants will set seed pretty readily in a 1.5 time over grazing system largely, and contribute seeds to that stand to be in our seed pool for future growth. As we know, this year was a clover or a birds with trefoil year. The beauty of all those seeds hopefully are going to pay dividends in the future.
I noticed because I opened the sack, I was kind of disappointed. I looked at all these big, fluffy seeds sitting there. I thought, man, this is not going to be a whole lot of plants out of the bag here. So that's my note anyways.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The thing about it to watch though is when I looked at how many seeds germinate and come, there's a real story here, because the fact is the reason why forage seeds don't germinate and come are, and I did this, and maybe you heard my Battle River research group presentation. Number one reason they don't come, they're seeded too deep. Number two reason they don't come, the soil's too soft. And so the lack of fertility, the seed to soil contact. I looked at all those things and thought the majority of forage stands, and a lot of our our blends that we're using now that are smaller seeds, if we do a really good job of making a great seed bed, seeding firmly into it, and I know that stand that we had the picture of at your place was seeded with very few seeds per square foot, but fortunately the drill you had to seed that stand and the situation unfolded that you had a lot of seeds germinate because you did a lot of things right. And so that's another real thing. A lot of presumption in forages is that people are going to do it wrong. And when you look at the old timers like Myron Bjorgi, Arvid Austin, Fraser Stewart, they just knew that. So that's why they gave you the numbers they did. And I'm sad to say it's still continuing today, and it shouldn't be.
Okay, that's awesome. Thanks for your thoughts, gentlemen. It looks like I don't have any more questions, so we want to finish by saying thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to spend this hour with us. We do have one more webinar coming up if you guys are interested in checking it out. This is also the website where you will find our recording. But you can join us for the Marginal Lands and Hidden Opportunities webinar coming up on December 10th. It will be starting at 1 p.m. And you can register by visiting this website. So thank you again for joining us. We hope you have a great evening.
Thanks, Sonia.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.